All right, so we should be live. We are going to be doing this is the last live stream for House of the Dragon season 1. It's been a emotional roller coaster. We've had our good, we've had our bad, and that's led us to now, right? And we're going to start out this stream by addressing a couple things on the channel after, this stream and in the future. And two, we're going to address what your guys' thoughts were. We're going to be looking at the polls and stuff like that. And all of that. So, let me read some comments, and then we'll talk about some things I want to talk about, and then we'll get in the episode. Also, let's address one thing. Young Wolf decided to come into the chat and go, imagine the Jets being better than the Patriots. That's a lot of imagination you have there. Because they aren't. The Patriots are better. I'm sorry. Nah, I'm just being. I don't like the Jets because I've seen so many people start being bandwagons of the Jets now, and I'm just like, come on, guys, come on. A Jet fan has not lived in Illinois and since Joe Namath was the quarterback. All right. So, hi Hugo. My milkshake bring all the lords to the realm. God, here we go, Billy Bob. Here we go. Already. I'm curious to hear your critiques. I actually felt this was the best episode, definitely the most intense, and surprisingly without any glaring plot holes or weak plot decisions. I can agree that I don't think there was any plot holes I had in this episode. There was things that made sense plot-wise with how the show has been with its own continuity that I think were bad decisions just for characters, but they still make sense. Like we'll talk about Aemon's death later, or not Aemon's, Luke's death later on, is that with the context of the show and what they'd been building up to, it made sense, right? Because Viserys had talked about earlier on in the series where they do not control the dragons, and that is kind of a misconception, and that he kind of feels, it almost feels like he's traumatized by Balerion. So to me, I thought that was built up and it had some foreshadowing, so it wasn't a plot hole or anything. I just think it would have been better if Aemond had intentionally killed Luke. I think it's better for his development. I just don't understand why I changed that from the source material to me. And we'll talk about Daemon choking Rhaenyra a little bit later as well. I want to address a couple of other things. Hugo, episode 8 is the king of episodes this season, hands down. Let me look at mine, because I've talked about House of the Dragon a lot today. I recorded 2 videos for it. I think my favorite episodes of the series, and again, I haven't watched the earlier episodes in a while, so this could change, but I think for me, it would be episode 8, or it would be episode 2 or 4. I had all 3 of those rated as a 9 out of 10. But yeah, I thought all of the episodes were above average besides episode 9 and I think 3. Hi, Anime Evie. How are you? How did you like the episode? Let me know what you guys thought about the episode. Out of 10, what did you guys think about the episode? I thought 9 was better. I feel like from the poll I've done, Glossy, that is a very bold take. I don't think a lot of people have liked this episode better, or episode 9 better than episode 10. Episode 8 is the best only as far as Viserys is concerned. He is the star of the episode. Yeah, that's true. I think there's a lot of good things, though, that happen in episode 8. The end of it sets up things I don't like in the future, like with how Viserys tells the prophecy to Alicent. But I think the episode as overall was pretty solid. I have to agree. I think Viserys is the best well-written character of the entire show. We need to put an APB. Yeah. 7 for you, Billy Bob. Okay, I can see that. Rhaenyra was great in this episode to me. Yes, Rhaenyra, I think, was a standout character in this episode, but I think they missed a lot of opportunities with her character. Episode 10 gave me the greatest hype, hands down, as it's appropriate for a finale. That's true. I will say, okay, so this is what I'll say when we get to talking about the like reviews or like the ratings by the fan base or whatever, or my fan base, I guess. But I'll talk about it. even 9 had some good moments. Yeah, even 9, it had good moments, but they were overshadowed by other things. I also am curious, Ashley, on to why you hated it so much. I know why you did, right? The changes are also bothering me, but it's not to the point where I'm willing to quit the show yet. Maybe that's because I'm a YouTuber for this type of content, but it does bother me a little. 9 out of 10, okay. 9 was all right, but shit the bed at the end. Yeah. 9 was good. The ending was the only bad part. I see, Glossy. That's where I differentiate. A lot of people will either be on one side or the other. You either buy into Allison's character arc and the Hightower's character arcs as a whole, or you don't, and I don't. So that episode gets kind of drugged down a bit for me. Lady Gonzo came in with a 7. Okay. Whitewashing the greens way too much. That is a criticism of mine. I talk about that in my season. Like not this stream is not for the whole series. This stream is just for the finale. But in my review I did for the whole season, I talked about how that's one of my things that I think is holding back the series is they just do not allow characters to grow at times. And it feels like they're trying to balance the sides at all times. And because they don't go deeper into Rhaenyra's character, where she's a darker character, she's a character that, you know, becomes more cruel, becomes a bit more mentally unstable, they have to kind of backtrack with the greens a lot and make them a bit more likable to where it kind of balances the scales, because the marketing around the show for season 2 is going to be just like Captain America, Iron Man for Civil War. If you guys remember that back, you know, when the whole marketing was like, oh, which side are you on? It's going to be, okay, which side are you on? The greens or the blacks? And if one side is overwhelmingly the protagonist side, right? You're not going to, like, there's not going to be that big divide. It's going to be more like, okay, maybe 75% is on the black side, 25. It's not the same, like, you know, they want to market it as everybody is like equal or whatever. And I know with that statement, the reason they are doing that, where they're making a lot of the characters more likable as well, is for the casual viewers. It's more digestible. It's I guess more viewer friendly as a casual viewer of say like you liked Game of Thrones, but you weren't that big into it, or, you know, all that. It's more of a digestible way of doing it, right? Tyrion is the same way in that show, or in Game of Thrones, and they even did that early on in the seasons as well. That wasn't just a late season thing. Aemond is not totally whitewashed, but I think it was a very missed opportunity for his development. I understand the book readers criticize the fact that they're portrayed as heroes, but so I agree, but I disagree. So Hugo, this is my problem with like Aemond's portrayal, right? You can have your good guys and your bad guys, but why does it feel like Daemon is the only character that is actually they're portraying as a villain? Like, they're specifically leaving out scenes. They're editing his character very weirdly. He is a character that I think is just, he is irredeemable. Like, he's not, like, people try to say he's this morally gray character in the show. He's not morally gray. He's a villain. He's a likable villain, right? So he's the type of villain where it's like Euron Greyjoy in the books, not the show, is a villain, but he's kind of a likable villain to some degree, right? Like, there's a lot of people that like Euron as villain, which makes a lot of sense. He's a really intriguing character. But like, that's what he is. He's not morally great. He's a villain. Daemon is a villain. Like, I don't know. Billy, as I understand, almost everyone is either gray or evil in the book. So what I think the book does really well is a lot of characters start out good, right? So a lot of characters start out pretty good, like they are, you know, decently good. And the war kind of trudges them through becoming more gray. Like, Rhaenyra at the start of her character is a character that is very similar to the way this story starts out, where she's a good character for the most part. And as we see traumatic experiences happen to her, as you know, the struggles between her and Alicent like evolve, she becomes more and more gray, and then kind of a villain towards the end. So it's more, I would say, leaning on, yes, there's a lot of morally gray and evil people during this time period, but it's a lot of people that are maybe morally gray or start out maybe at a good point, and it's kind of more about power corrupts, what war does to people, what loss does to people. That's kind of the whole theme of the Dance of the Dragons, right? Billy Bob, I was not saying Euron in the books is a gray character. I meant like he's a likable villain. If you get what I'm trying to say. Right? Like I'm trying to say like he's a villain that a lot of people like tend to like, or maybe not root for, but they like him. Like Daemon is not a character I root for, but I enjoy seeing him on screen. Does that make sense? That's what I'm trying to say. I'm not trying to say he is morally gray. Hold on. 9 for me, except for Daemon. So yeah, this is a big problem a lot of people have had with the episode, is Daemon choking Rhaenyra, and I'm going to address it. But with, let me give the quick answer. For the show's logic, I think it makes sense. If we're looking at it from a point of view of, is this Daemon in book Daemon? No. Let's like look at what Daemon's done. He has been done so many awful actions. Does it really surprise you guys that he tries to or basically chokes Rhaenyra? Like, he doesn't care for his last wife, really. I mean, to a degree he does, maybe. He kills his wife who's innocent. Like, I don't know. Like, I think with Daemon, it is just to the point where his character is such a villain that doesn't surprise me. That doesn't, you know, like I would rather him not do that and not be the character they're portraying him on the screen, but that's the way they've built this character. I have the same opinion, Ashley, but honestly, the show would be uninteresting if the Greens are so villainous like the books. But see, this is the problem, right? If you look at the redeeming characters of the Green side, I would point to Daeron, who's not even been introduced. I think Alicent is not as villainous as maybe in the books. I never read Alicent as villainous in the book. Like I read her as like, she was like, and this is my whole thing, is that I don't view Otto and like Alicent, even in the book, as being villainous. There are people like Tywin Lannister, which, yes, villainous, but they are trying to forward their family and gain more power. It's a very human trait. I never saw them as being a villain. Now, the character I did see as villainous was like Aemond and Aegon to a degree, but we don't know as much about, like, confirmed about what he was doing, like the show. I don't believe George R.R. Martin writes wholly good or bad people. No, he does not. He really does not. It's like very small, like sometimes like someone like Samuel Tarly is inherently kind of a good person. But where I was going with that, I realized I didn't really complete my thought there, is that if they were going to make all the Greens how they were in the book, they need to make Rhaenyra be the character she is in the book. And because they didn't want to do that with Rhaenyra, I'm assuming because they were scared to do something like that because of the Daenerys is mad plot in Game of Thrones, that is the only reason I can see as to why they did not go this route with Daenerys, and that it makes it a character casual fans can root for. That's the reason I think they didn't go into Rhaenyra's character as hard, and I think they will start to do that now because of the show's popularity, and that's why I think as they write these seasons, because it's going to be slowing down, I think we're going to get a better characterization of characters, because now that they know, they shouldn't be scared, right? They shouldn't be scared to write things now. They know the show is hugely popular, especially with the casual fan base. I think more of the book readers, like myself, like a lot of you guys in chat, have had issues with some of the writing, but I think for casuals, this show has worked quite well. Just speaking with one of my friends who has never, he's interested in Game of Thrones and stuff like that, but he's never read Fire and Blood. He hasn't read the books outside, I think, the first one, and he really likes this show. So I think for me, they've done a good job on catering to the casual fan base and bringing more people into the community. But because of that, other things are going to suffer. So. Apart from Viserys, I think Laenor was also very well written. Liked him so much better in the show. That is another good point. I think Laenor was better in the show. I didn't like the way they ended his character in season 1, but I think he was well written. And yeah, Lady Gonzo, when like how Hugo is saying, there are characters that it's like for the most part you are correct, but there are very small things where Joffrey is just inherently like an evil kid. Like we understand his bringing up. It's kind of similar to the way they're doing Aegon's character, but he is a inherently evil dude. Yeah, yeah. So Beelzebub, this is apparent. I mean, when they are constantly taking out scenes that show any type of humanity with Daemon, whether that be cutting off of like he has this scene right that we're going to talk about in this episode where he's kind of having a breakdown, like he's kind of crying, he's just breaking down on the beach about Viserys's death and also presumably his daughter's death, that, you know, the baby, that's a very gory scene. And it shows a lot more of Daemon's humanity, and they just kind of cut it really. And then they cut other things where, so we see this scene where Rhaenyra is holding her dead baby or whatever in her arms, and Daemon walks in. And it's kind of setting up to Daemon have some sort of comforting Rhaenyra, or at least saying something to some degree, and then it's just cut off, and we're with Rhaenyra and the Silent Sisters. Very weird editing, and it's something that I think holds back this episode and the series as a whole. Is Daemon just? It feels like they just don't like Daemon. Like they do not want the audience to like him as a character. I don't know. I have to disagree, Grease. I think the change opens up the opportunity for his character to develop. So Glossy, where do you think he is going to develop? Out of curiosity, like, because if he is going to develop into this villainous character as he does in the book after this event, like even before this event, why prolong it, right? And this is my other thing, is that it fits perfectly into the story that they had been telling about Aemond already. Aemond was a kid, or is a kid, that gets bullied because he doesn't have a dragon, even by his own family. Everyone kind of doubts him. It appears he kind of has that kind of story. He's at constant, and this to me is kind of a key thing here, is he is being trained his whole life by Criston Cole to hate the strong kids, or whoever you believe their father is, and being trained against them. And then all of a sudden, you know, he gets Vhagar, and he now has an untold cockiness because he has the best dragon. I think any kid at that age getting that much power, Aegon, it literally happens with Aegon at the end of episode 9, would change. And he eventually gets his eye taken out, and we see that he still holds a grudge about that, and he's to a degree kind of insecure about it. I feel like he had all of the motive and all of the means to wanting to have Luke killed, right? It's what he's been trained to do. And then you also look at, okay, they're at war basically right now, the way Aemond sees it, right? I just feel like all the means were there for that to develop and to be a pretty good origin story for the Greens' major villain, Aemond, right? Because like I've talked about, Aemond is the Greens, in my opinion, their actual major villain, right? Where Daemon, in my opinion, in the show version anyway, is what Aemond kind of is in the book, where he's this kind of guy that's very quick to anger. He's kind of a cruel guy, but he's more of a fighter type. You know, he's literally what Daemon is in the show, in my opinion. But yeah. The books are completely filled with good and evil characters. The idea that everyone is gray is completely off. I get what you're saying, but when you think about like a lot of like, I think majority of people written in A Song of Ice and Fire are morally gray. Not everybody. Again, not everyone, right? Not everyone. We've already talked about this. There are certain characters that are good. Davos seems like a good character. Shireen seems like a morally good character. Evil side of it, Joffrey, Ramsay. We've talked about these already. It's not like everybody is morally gray. It's you have some characters here and there where genuinely seem like a good person or a bad person, but for the most part, a lot of people lie in that line, and that's how real life is. That's how real life is as well. In real life, a lot of people have their own stuff going on and could be questionable, but there are those people that are just really good people. There's bad people in the world. That's kind of how I've always looked at it. And I agree with Matthew here. I wouldn't say in the books the blacks are portrayed as the good guys either. The biggest thing here is if you notice, if I had done like a black, which team are you? Team black or team green? And if I was saying this before the show started, it would have been a much more even split than what the show will be, I think. And I also agree here with Ashley's sentiment. If we look at the characters that are inherently the most likable of the green side of it, Daeron wasn't even in season 1. And we understand why he wasn't in season 1. But, I mean, he is one of the better Targaryens for the green side, and we'll get to see him in season 2. Helena, again, another pretty good character. A very tragic character, as we'll come to see in the rest of House of the Dragon. Yeah, it's very unfortunate we have not seen Sunfire yet. Hello, Zen. How are you, by the way? If the creators hated Daemon, they wouldn't have given him the scene of him helping up Viserys in the putting up of the crown. They're just making him a complex character, which he is. So I agree with Zen, but I disagree. That wasn't even supposed to happen, if you think about it, Zen. That wasn't supposed to happen. That was all, like, Matt Smith did that, like, during the thing. And it's a great scene to the point where I think if that had been a like deleted scene and people had seen that, they would have gotten a ton of hate for that. So I don't know. Yeah, it's like giving so basically Jade, basically. I'm getting so far behind on comments or chat. I've just noticed this with streams later on, but hold on. Let me go all the way back up, lads. All the way back up. I did not realize I was this far behind. Fangirl simping over Daeron. Yes, that is correct. When I say gray, I don't mean morally gray. I just mean that everyone has a reason for what they do. Okay, that makes sense. Two good side characters on the greens isn't really going to make the greens complex or help their case. I mean, but if you look at the black side of things, right? If the blacks had been written properly, like how they are in the book, you could feasibly argue that there are more morally good characters on the green side of things. Like Rhaenyra is a character that is very dark. Like she starts out really good. She starts out like as a good morally character, and because of loss and things that happen to her, and I'm not even talking about later in the war. I'm talking about like at the beginning. She is someone that is not a hero. Like she's not the protagonist, right? It's an interesting moral argument, and Daemon is the same way. Daemon is not a character that is an inherent hero. He's a badass that I think a lot of people like, but he's not. He's morally complex. He's very in the middle, and we're constantly being told to kind of question what did he do, what did he not do in the story, and that's what makes him very interesting. Now, with that being said, I think you could point to a lot of Rhaenyra's children being on that good side of things, but you don't see a lot of them. So, and with that even being said, Corlys has his own motivation. So it's an interesting discussion, but Grease, did you see my post that I sent you on Insta on all the cut Daemon scenes? I had no idea what. Yes, I did see that. That's kind of part of the stuff I mentioned a little earlier, but they cut a ton and they edited a ton of things. They mixed and managed things. episode 10 was a very weird sequence of events for Damon. Like it was just all over the place. And actually, Glossy, if the writing is good, I don't think this is something like perfect. I agree with Ashley. So a character like Joffrey, right, is a character everybody hates. Right? He's a character everybody hates. He is one of the greatest villains ever put to screen. Right? The acting that Jack Gleason did for Joffrey, some of the greatest acting I've ever seen in my life. When people ask me my top 5 villains or whatever, say pick some villains or whatever, Joffrey will always be in there, right? If we're going off of on-screen things or even books, people do not mind strong villains as long as they're done right. And I think it's okay to have villains. And I think you need villains. As the showrunners made Daemon kind of the scapegoat, Daemon was the villain of season 1. So I guess you could also throw an Otto Hightower in there as well, but Helena is seen as the innocent victim. Some people will still laugh at Blood and Cheese. Glossy, what friends do you have that laugh at Blood and Cheese? But I guess I can see hardcore black supporters. Like I don't know. I always found that disturbing when I read that. But with the exception of Viserys, it was hard to get emotionally invested with these characters. So I would agree to disagree there. If you look at the end of this show, I can definitely see where you're coming from. Because if you look at Luke as a character, right? So his death is supposed to be really emotional, impactful death. We really didn't get much of Luke. Like, we saw a little bit of him here and there, and he didn't have the most amount of development. When he does get his development, it's pretty good. But I do understand that, and I think they ruined a lot of their own emotional investment, right? So I think starting out the season, I think Rhaenyra and Alicent, I say this all the time. Alicent, to me, had the strongest arc up until episode 8. And a lot of the way she flip-flops around on her motivations, I think has hurt my investment in her character, right? Because it doesn't feel natural almost at times, but I don't know. I definitely can see why you'd have that opinion, Manver, though. Oh, okay. Makes sense, Billy Bob. I know I was very far behind. Yes, we also didn't even talk about Larys because I forgot about Larys. But yeah, Kristen also is another villain. What's weird, though, is Kristen's not supposed to be a villain. So I don't know if they are making out Kristen to be a villain in the show, or they just want him to act like that. But I don't know. Yeah, Chris. So that's a good point, Glossy. That's a good point, and that's why we all have opinions. We can all have our own ideas here. It's good. It's good. I love the finale agrees. I think they truly have us a different take on what could have happened between Aemon and Luke. We have to remember. Yes, I get that, and that's what I'm saying. Is that I am not saying that this could not have happened. That Aemon, because this is what possibly, if we're gonna go off the storyline they've built, this is what possibly could have happened. Aemon comes back from this, and instead of saying, okay, it's an accident and all these things, he just owns up to it, and he just, because, you know, it's not like Aemon didn't basically put the situation that the accident eventually happens. Like, he was chasing Luke. Maybe Aemon comes back into season 2, and he's just like, to the public anyway, to our knowledge, he's like, yeah, I killed Luke, I did this or whatever, and that's kind of his motive, and that's maybe how in Fire and Blood, why we have that information. And again, it's all possible they built it up and developed it throughout the season. I just like, personally, the narrative of Aemon wanting to kill him. I think, for me, it works better for Aemon. But that's personal opinion. So again, that's not something that I'm going to say, oh, this was bad writing, this was this or this. I think, to me, if you even look at future things to happen with Blood and Cheese, this being an accident impacts that as well, right? So I don't know, and right now I can't judge the plot line that they're trying to do yet, because I don't know what's going to follow. What's the resulting going to be of this? How are they going to conclude the like stuff there. Now you know why I fear they'll have him do Blood and Cheese himself or be the stand-in. Yeah, and that is something I could see them doing. Yes, but I agree with you guys, Hugo and all that. Tywin Lannister isn't as villainous in this story. No, he's not. The Greens may have truly been painted way more evil from the interpretation of the narrator, which makes the show's interpretation as feasible. It may, in fact, have gone this way in fictional. It's possible. Again, it's very possible, Zen. And you bring up a valid point that, yes, the Fire and Blood is a narration that we can't exactly take as 100% fact. And the reason that I tend to believe what the Greens did in that war is because it comes straight from a maester. It comes straight from someone that would, I think there's a lot of connection. The show even established it. They didn't go the full mile with it, but they established it that the Greens and the maesters have some, or the Hightowers, not the Greens. The Hightowers and the maesters have a connection together. And that's why I tend to believe when the maesters are telling me things that they probably did happen to some degree in that way. I like that they're going into that the Targaryens and dragons are connected to some degree, right? Like, the stronger your will. I do like that. I just don't like that they necessarily used it as the reason for why Luke dies. I'm not a huge fan of that part of it, but I do like the way they're going with that. And that's going to have a lot of interesting effects in the war. And it's going to be interesting to see how they continue to build on that. It's very understandable that they don't want to make Rhaenyra and like Daenerys. Yeah, so that to me, it's something that I didn't actually really think about until today when I was doing my reviews and I was really thinking about the episode quite a lot. Is when you're think about being in a room and you're pitching this show to HBO or you're writing it. You probably want to, like, Rhaenyra's character, not her actual character arc exactly, but her character looks a lot like Daenerys. It's going to remind a lot of casual fans of Daenerys. You want to probably stay clear of the crazy stuff, at least early on, because it's going to give people flashbacks to season 8. I think fans are going to start reading Fire and Blood before season 2. Maybe. I don't know, though, because the problem is it's very different reading A Song of Ice and Fire and Game of Thrones. Like, because they're the same kind of story, right? Because you have to think Fire and Blood, like, Dance of the Dragons is a segment of that book. It's not the whole thing. So I don't know how much people will do that. I give the season a 7 out of 10. That is a fair rating. I gave the season in my review an 8.1 out of 10. I basically just averaged all my scores from the 10 episodes, and that was what I gave it. That is a good point, Smitty. 7 out of 10. So I'm actually interested that I'm rating it a bit higher than you guys, but again, I did give the season an 8. Yeah, Hugo, I just think Daemon's character is a whiff. I think they can fix a lot of the other characters going forward and build on them, but Daemon's character to me is just shattered. His character's all over the place. He's irredeemable. I don't know. I'm glad you liked it, Jade. I don't know why I can't speak. So basically, I think the Kinslayer title will obviously follow him, and he will have to live with that, knowing it was an accident. None of his family will believe him. Okay, that could be a good. And if they did that, I would give them a lot of credit because that is a good plot line and a good way to go with that arc. That no one believes him. It's the reason maybe he becomes a bit even worse than he is now. So that could be interesting, Glossy. And that's why I love these streams, because you guys come up with good ideas even when I don't think it's possible. um I agree, Hugo, by the way, on your sentiment there. I agree with you, Lady Gonzo, but to my point here, I already think Daemon is basically completely evil. I mean, like, name redeeming factors of Daemon. Like, name me good qualities of Daemon that aren't like bad. Like, tell me why you would say he has even a little bit of light. You know, Glossy, you have some very good ideas. I will give you that. Um, Emma Darcy looked way more like Book right now. Yeah, I think they did a really good job with her. Fair Paxton Press. I think that would be a good idea. Yeah, like this is my whole thing is that that scene was not something the writers had planned, right? That's something that he basically just came up with on the spot, and it's something that wasn't supposed to happen, and they just kind of went with it because fantastic scene. One of them actually, it's probably if I had to rank like certain, if I had to like take my top 5 favorite or not episodes, top 5 favorite scenes of the series so far, that'd probably be in one. I think it was a really good one. Um. Also, I would say Cersei is not an evil character. Um. Towards the end, she will be, and she kind of is now. But if you look at her upbringing, I think she was morally gray, leaning dark, and then she just becomes more and more dark. Also, what's your thoughts on Henry Cavill playing Hugh Hammer? I think why does every goddamn person want Henry Cavill to play something in Game of Thrones? First, it's Robert Baratheon, then it's this. Zen, you know what? No Henry, no Henry. Um, Aemond is portrayed as the and this is the thing. They've also built Aemond as being kind of this evil dude. Every stare he's given at you is like dead into your soul. And I don't know. I just think I think it just I don't know. Thank you, Greece. We are tired. But yeah. Glossy, you got them good ideas every once in a while. Every once in a while when you're not obsessing over the crab feeder. Yeah, so the way I interpreted Aemond's kind of shock face after the fact that Luke was dead is that Aemond, again, going off of show logic and the way the show portrayed this event, is that Aemond was really trying to scare the living shit out of Luke and trying to basically send a message. Like, if you go to war, just remember, you got to deal with this. And I think that's where they were trying to go with it, so that when Aemond or Vhagar, let's just say Vhagar, kills Jace and Arax, he didn't want that to happen. Like he didn't want to be a kinslayer in that moment, and he didn't want to basically start the war, more or less. And I agree, Ashley. I mean, I'm going off of the show's logic, the way I interpreted what they were trying to explain. I think it's very stupid that or not Vhagar, that Aemond would do something like this with Vhagar when he knows that dragons are quite ferocious creatures, and you have the oldest and biggest. It just, I don't know. I don't know. I like the foreshadowing between Aemond and Daemon. Yes, they did a really good job with that in what, episode 8? Or yeah, episode 8. Fair enough, Zen. Aemon just had crazy road rage. He didn't mean to actually hit anybody. Yeah. Yeah, Matthew, that's kind of how I interpreted it. I want to say, though, that scene, by the way, gave me the most, like, Jurassic Park vibes ever. Like, it just reminded me of just back in the day when it's like, oh, yeah, like, our main character's running away from, like, a T-Rex, or the raptors are in the forest, and like, it just reminded me of that whole atmosphere. Especially Jurassic Park 1 with the T-Rex. Have you come to accept Aegon II is the legitimate king yet? I have not, but you presented a very good argument, I will say. All right, so we haven't even started going through the actual episode. So I guess parts of this stream I will probably just skip over since we've talked about them a lot. But let's go to the poll I did last night, talking about what you guys thought of the episode. So let's go back to episode 9, because I think episode 9 is an interesting place to look at. Episode 9 had 619 votes. About 60% of people said it was about a 7 to an 8. And then there was another 14% that said, hold on, we need a water break. 14% said 5 to 6, and then 3% for 4 and lower, and then 24% of people said it was about a 9 to 10. So we skip to episode 10. And episode 10, about 50% of people had this as a 9 to a 10 out of 10. And then another 43% of people said a 7 to an 8. So again, you have about 91% of people out of about 340 people that said this was a pretty good episode. At the very least. Pretty good but flawed. So to me, episode 10 was pretty well received, even for people that didn't read the books or anything like that, which is a good sign for the strength of the show and them being able to have more confidence on what they can do in season 2. All right. I may not read as much chat at the moment just because I want to start getting through the actual episode and going through everything that happened. I'm quite distressed. Ashley, I know. It is Team Black time, by the way. It's Team Black. So, let's get into it. So we have the opening shot of the Dragonstone, like, table. You know, the table that they will show multiple times in this episode. Really great music intro. Setting the tone for the episode was really good. That's another thing I want to talk about. The music in this episode was fantastic. They elevated scenes all throughout the episode or played into the horror elements or the, for instance, like Aemond and Luke at the end. Music was great during that. So yeah. And then we started this first conversations with Rhaenyra and Luke. And it was a really great scene. Just a good mother-son scene. And it was very nice to see because we never see any of these with the green side of it. We don't see, like, Alicent, like, because, again, I don't blame Alicent to that regard because it's like her children are kind of either weird or not great people. So it's nice to see a scene with, you know, Rhaenyra and Luke, and this, again, is being used because Luke's going to die at the end of the episode. So they want to build up his character, make it more emotional. And I thought this was a really good one where Rhaenyra is kind of like, you know, Luke, sometimes we have to do things that we don't want to do because it's our duty. And it reminded me of, like, Stannis, you know, like that. So it was great. I like that. I like this first opening conversation with Rhaenyra and Luke, and it really sets the tone for the episode. So then we have Rhaenys arriving, and this was, to me, a disappointment, is that I wasn't sure how they were going to explain Rhaenys not killing the Greens here, and the answer is they really didn't. Like, Daemon asks her, like, you know, you could have killed, you know, them, basically, and Rhaenys is just like, it wasn't my war to start, and that's it. It's a one line, that's it. And I'm just like, Rhaenys, is that really your justification? Like, do you not think you killing innocent people, like innocent people, and then threatening the Greens is going to get you out of this war? Like, do you think that there's no way a war is not going to start? You know who Rhaenyra and Daemon are. They're not going to bend the knee. So it's all on Alicent's side, and we've already seen that they've crowned the Aegon. So I don't know. I thought this was a very bad justification for why she does what she does, but she gives that anyway. Now, I want to say Rhaenyra's, or I guess Emily, is it Emily Darcy? Is that her name? Or Emma Darcy? One of the two. She does a great job of emotional facial acting, where no words are said here, but her pain in her voice, where she's going through grief, anger, sadness. Her father's died. She's been usurped, betrayed by Alicent. A lot of emotions going on, and she does a great job of acting, and her performance here is fantastic. So I made a note of that, and I wanted to straight up say that here. And this kind of leads to her baby coming early, which never is a good sign in this world. And all of that kind of happens. We'll talk about that a little bit later. And I it kind of sets the tone for the episode when everything's just colliding on Rhaenyra at the same time. Her baby's coming too early. Her father's dead. Her friend she made up with, right? Everything's not going well. Not going well. But yeah. So we have this idea where now Rhaenyra is trying to give birth, and Daemon takes charge. And to me, right, this was kind of disturbing, right? Because again, Daemon is a villain, right? We know this. But my question here was, the last time we see Daemon and Rhaenyra together, right, that they're fine. Like, they don't look like they have any ill will towards each other. They look like, decent, or whatever. But then all of a sudden, Daemon's just like, yeah, no, I'm not helping Rhaenyra. Don't give a fuck. Like, I just don't care. Like, we're going to plan this war now, and that's it. Don't care. Okay? I thought it was a bit odd how quickly their relationship basically deteriorates. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know. It didn't make sense to me why Daemon, like, again, Daemon is an evil character, right? And it makes sense on the context of he's not a good dude, but it just seems really odd that their relationship kind of just deteriorates that quickly. But yeah, I thought that was a little interesting. And so this is what I like here, is that this is the major difference from episode 9 to 10 for me. So episode 9 really didn't talk about the war. It didn't focus on what is going on. What are our strengths? What's our weaknesses? What do we need to do to kickstart this war? What families do we need to get into our side? Right? It's one of those things where the Black Council, and with Daemon here, we get more information, right? A casual viewer, right, doesn't really know the advantages, the disadvantages to both sides. And this episode does a much better job of telling us what's going on. Like, what is going on, right? But yeah. Also, gonna address something in the chat, because I just saw it. All right, whatever pronouns people want to use, we're gonna respect that. Right? That's all I'm gonna say there. That's all I'm gonna say. I did not know she was non-binary, but yeah, we're gonna respect that. We're gonna respect what people want to be called and whatever. And yeah, no, we're not spreading hate here. Okay, we can hate the showrunners all we want, but we're not hating people because of whatever choices they want to do. All right, so now we got that out of the way. So let's see, where am I at? All right, so we have a little scene of Jace and Luke sparring, and Jace was kind of being an asshole. I'm not gonna lie here. Like, Jace was basically just being like, "Oh, what are you doing, Luke?" And just be, I don't know, maybe it's some brotherly love, but I was like, man, Jace, that was kind of a little disrespectful, especially when your brother's gonna die in this episode. But yeah, and another thing I wanted to note here about Daemon is that it really is unfortunate that we didn't see more of the Stepstones. And for me, seeing Daemon take charge and being a really great military mind, and even Corlys later on, it would have been amazing to have seen them actually learning these skills in the Stepstones and war and all those things. It would have been great to have seen that. But yeah, so let's move on. So I really liked that Jace. Yeah, also Honky Kong, not really the place. We're not getting political here. We're not. I have my own political like things going on that I believe in, but we're not talking about it right now. We're not talking about it. So yeah, just a fair warning, Honky Kong. We're not in the place for that. We're talking about we're talking about the series and all that, and that goes for the whole chat. Also, see you, Paxton. I hope you enjoyed the part of it, but yeah, I want to make this known for people in general, so this doesn't come up as much. We are not talking about politics or things like that on this stream. If you want to be respectful about it and you guys want to have a conversation about it, fine. But yeah. So Jace takes charge and all this stuff, and I was gonna note here that I didn't really like the infighting, you know, with like Daemon and Rhaenyra and stuff like that and whatever. But it kind of worked itself out at the end anyway. But I do like that Jace is taking charge. It's kind of foreshadowing what he does later in the episode and more in the series. Honky Kong, by the way, I'm not saying like just you. I'm talking about everybody in general. Everybody in general. Luke should have went to the Vale and Rhaenys to Storm's End. I stand by it. So this is something that I wish they would have done in the episode, is explained why Jace is going to the north, the Vale, and why Luke was sent to Storm's End. I wish they would have talked about more about it was because, well, Jace is the older one. He should have the more dangerous journey, while Luke just goes to Storm's End. It's really close. And all of that. I wish they would have kind of leaned into that a little bit more. But yeah, Matthew, you are correct. You are correct. So we move on, and we finally figure out that Corlys is okay. And, well, okay, so let me answer your question, Glossy, in two ways. So if we're going to go off the show, it's because Daemon is supposed to be going to the Riverlands, and that's going to be his whole thing. And then two, in the book, like, he was already in the Riverlands by the time Luke dies. All right, so moving on. So this is the problem that kind of bothered me. Like when I was talking about earlier with Rhaenyra and Daemon here, is Rhaenyra is quite literally screaming for Daemon, and he just shrugs it off. And so this is my confusion now, is that did Daemon actually care about Rhaenyra in previous episodes, or was this just a whole Daemon just wanted to use her? Because in the book, I think we don't know, but I think there's way more hints that Daemon was kind of just using her in the book. In the show, they kind of go a different route, I feel like, where it's like, at least we know Rhaenyra like cares about Daemon, but does Daemon care about her? I don't know. I'm interested to see what your guys' thoughts are with that. Also, just talking about like how Schmitty says with Daemon going to the Riverlands. Yeah, it makes way more sense for Daemon to go to the Riverlands. The Riverlands are, at this point, with the Tullys, the most uneasy ally, like, for the Blacks. They have, because if you think about it, right, the Northmen, very loyal to their vows, like that. We see that with Ned. So it makes sense that they would join the Blacks, right? The Vale, Rhaenyra has Aaron blood. Rhaenys is part Baratheon. So you have all these blood ties, and that's why it makes the most amount of sense for Daemon to go to the most hostile area where the most warfare is going to happen, right? So, also, hi, Bridget, how are you? So that's something I wanted to say. Also, will Dorne be mentioned at all? I think it'd be really interesting if they did include Dorne into the story to some degree, but in the lore they are not. So yeah. Let's see, where are we at? So then Jace interrupts Daemon on when he's making his plans, and Daemon kind of like is just like, all right, Jace, I'm gonna go show you something. They go out to the Kingsguard, basically threatens him and stuff. And I thought it was a pretty solid scene. I think it was a solid scene. Yeah, I think Daemon loves Rhaenyra in episode 8 and 10, but the choking scene was weird to me. Yeah, but his wife is... So Rhaenyra is literally screaming, yelling in pain, calling for him. And then he chokes her lady. Like, I just don't believe... I don't believe their relationship. Like, I don't know. So we get all that. And then we have, so, okay, this is the part, like, Rhaenyra's birthing scene was very disturbing. Very disturbing. But, yeah, very traumatic for Rhaenyra. I could not even fathom having to go through like that, like, going through all of the pain and hardships of pregnancy, and then just to literally see your dead child directly in front of you. Like, that is horrifying that I would never wish on anyone. And they really do a great job of showing how mortified Rhaenyra is and should be. And it's just a very disturbing scene. But, yeah. But, moving on. Another thing I pointed out here that I thought was interesting is the baby dying. It also occurs on really the first day of Rhaenyra's reign, and it's kind of a foreshadowing to Rhaenyra's reign as a whole. If they wanted to bring Dorne in, they should have... Yeah, that's a good point. So we move on. And I do again want to say, Emma Darcy's acting is fantastic, like genuinely very good. So I just wanted to show another shout out to that. Now this is again where we see some weird editing from Daemon, or Daemon's character. So Daemon walks into the room and Rhaenyra has her dead baby in her hands or her arms. And Daemon walks in as to say something, like let's say we have the camera on me right in the stream. It's like I walk in, I don't say anything, and then it cuts to another scene. It's really weird, really odd. I just don't understand why they're doing those things, but yeah. So, moving on, scene 4. So scene 4 is basically kind of the crowning of Rhaenyra, and Rhaenyra's coronation was by far a really great moment for the show. It was one of my favorite scenes, and something Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon has now continued is that these very big scenes, these emotional scenes, these big payoff scenes always have great music, and the music when Rhaenyra is getting crowned, especially when Daemon puts the crown on her head, is fantastic. This was definitely a great scene for me. I don't really have much to say, and I love that what they did here is Rhaenyra is almost a lot like Aegon in this moment, where Rhaenyra's face is full of pain and indecision. It almost feels like when the crown's being placed on her head, and when everybody's kind of kneeled and all this stuff, Rhaenyra kind of feels like in her facial expression that she has found kind of a new strength. Similar but different to Aegon's coronation, where Aegon feels something different. Aegon feels power. And I think Rhaenyra just feels supported, which I think is two different ways of strength. And then this, okay, so this, I when I was typing it, I literally typed, when they go to the table, what a beautiful fucking shot of the table. Holy cow. Because that was, the lighting up of the table was just a beautiful shot. And I would love to have a table like that. Like, if I become rich one day, I'm getting a table like that. Mark my words. I personally would pass. Yeah, well, they were. Yeah, yeah. Again, Ashley, it's things like that you're talking about, like right here. So I hope this does it on stream where you guys can see that. That is the character development they are missing in the show. They are missing the darker side of Rhaenyra and her flaws. They don't talk about them in the show, and I think it does just not do her character justice to some degrees. Again, another good point. I love Rhaenyra's theme with the humming. Yes, agreed. It was very good. Yep, agreed, Hugo. All right. So now season 5 is where we get the official kind of Black Council. And this, again, it was two of the best scenes followed up kind of back to back, right? Where we have Rhaenyra, and this is what I think is interesting, is that Rhaenyra has known she is going to be queen kind of her whole life, right? And she's been preparing for this, right? And she, even now, she still feels kind of nervous or unprepared. And it was great attention to detail because that's a very human emotion. It's something that you would see happen. And I'm kind of referring to how like her guards are following her, and then she's just like kind of like turns to them to like, have them back up and stuff. It was really great, I guess, emotion and great attention to detail there. And we've already talked about the Black Council a bunch in this episode, or this, why do I keep saying episode? This stream. But this council is really what the Green Council should have been. It really just talks about everything. It talks about the dragons. How many dragons do we have? How many dragons do they have? What do the Greens have as an advantage, right? They have they have the Lannister support. I really like that, and I wish we had gotten more of that. We also get the, oh god, almost kicked my light. We see the importance of Harrenhal as key. So again, there's just so much in this that I really loved. Kristen has the biggest character assassination though. Yeah, I mean, I would agree. I think Kristen's character has definitely not been great. Agreed, Hugo. Agreed. Yeah, I agree, Ashley. That's something I did have in my notes. I just didn't say it when I was reviewing that part of the scene on stream. As I had something noted, like, okay, so one, how did Eric get the crown? I don't know if I'm missing that from last episode. And then two, how did he get here? Because it would seem as though the harbor is being watched and all these things by Clubfoot. How did he actually get there? Is another thing. That's true, Glossy. That's true. There's no Crispin, only Reek now. Oh boy. Oh boy. I also like how there's the differences between Daemon and Rhaenyra, where Daemon is willing to go the route of just, let's just go to King's Landing and just fuck it up. And then Rhaenyra is kind of more like the Daenerys. And that's the thing. They've framed Rhaenyra a lot like Daenerys in this episode, where Rhaenyra is very unwilling to be ruling over a kingdom of ashes, right? We get the famous Daenerys line later on. It's very similar. But yeah. So the Greens show up to Dragonstone, and I kind of had a problem with the way they did this as well. So for people that did not read the book, the Grand Maester shows up, right? Not Otto. And why I have a problem with this scene is the exact reason I have a problem with Otto showing up, and I believe it was episode 2. Is the whole idea that, why is Otto here? Like, we're about to be at war. More than likely, we already are at war. Otto shows up, no dragon support, with about 5 dudes on this little crosswalk. Do you understand how stupid that is from Otto's point of view? It's like if Catelyn walks up to the Lannisters with like 2 guards and it's the entire Lannister army to like parlay. Like really? Like why don't they just take Otto prisoner? It's literally like Daemon knows Otto is basically the main driving force behind the High Towers. Why don't I know Daemon wants to, but why doesn't Rhaenyra just? Maybe she thinks it'll start a war, which it would have. But at the same time, it's like war is already going to happen. Like there's one question that needs to be asked to Rhaenyra, and if she can answer yes to it, then maybe there's a peace. Rhaenyra, can you bend the knee to Aegon and say he is the legit king? Because if you cannot do that, there is going to be a war. It's as simple as that. It's as simple as Rhaenyra, can you give up your crown? And we get a really badass shot of Rhaenyra and Syrax on this bridge or whatever. And again, really great. I have a problem with the logic of it, right? Well, Robb and Kat did walk into the twins. Well, that's fair. That's fair. I meant more like Catelyn if she was walking in the first time, right? Because at that point, like, they obviously probably should have known something was up, which Catelyn does in the book. Catelyn knew something was up in the book, but it was kind of the only thing they could do. Yeah, I think Matthew's talking more about the Red Wedding. I think he's talking about that, but yeah. And to me, is what I think is funny here is Otto's offer is laughable at best, like just laughable. Like the offer is like, oh yeah, you can keep Dragonstone. It's like, I already own Dragonstone. What are you gonna do? Like go to war over Dragonstone? Oh, Luke will still be the heir to Driftmark. He's already the heir to Driftmark. Viserys already made that a fact, so unless you're going to break law again, okay, everybody will be pardoned. Okay, that's your offer? I'm just sitting here, I'm just like, all right, well, I mean, it's good that we didn't get an offer that actually makes sense, that Rhaenyra would have accepted. But then Rhaenyra's like, so this was a good callback, is that Alicent gives Rhaenyra, like, the little page or whatever, or Otto does, but it's from Alicent. And it was like, okay, I get that they're trying to play off this relationship, but are we really not gonna talk about the whole idea here that Alicent just backstabbed Rhaenyra. They literally just got back together as friends. And okay, let's put it this way. It's like, let's say you get back together with your ex. So your girlfriend, your boyfriend, whatever. And you get back together, you're like, okay, this is gonna be great. Right? And we're gonna be great together, okay? We're gonna go on dates and stuff. And then literally like not even 2 days, like literally a day after, right? Your opposite sex, whatever, your boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever, cheats on you. Like, that's like, I don't know. It just feels like, to me, like, this shouldn't really have meant as much as Rhaenyra did as it did, but I don't know. So Rhaenyra takes some time to think about it. And she's, thinking about, okay, maybe I should sue for peace. Which, again, us, the audience, know it's not going to happen. And I don't really know why you even are bothering with having Rhaenyra maybe conflicted. Because it's just whatever. I mean, it's just whatever. Like, I like the idea way better that a Maester shows up, Rhaenyra basically throws it in his face, takes his chain, and is like, yeah, no. Like, I like that way better. It makes way more sense. The show really did not give me the impression that Laenor was a victim. It seems he got along with Rhaenyra, and they were respectful. Neither one was willing to cause trouble to the other. I do not think so. If you guys are saying that like Laenor is being abused, Laenor was not being abused. I think Rhaenyra was very understanding of Laenor. Like, I disagree with that sentiment. I think a lot of things that are being, that Shad is referencing is like, Rhaenyra was frustrated. I mean, you know, where she really wasn't getting any support from Laenor to a degree. Laenor was shrugging off his responsibilities. So yeah. Hi Larry, how are you? Otto with spare pins is absolutely hilarious and should be a meme. It should be. That's a good one, Queen. That's a good one. Yeah, agreed, Devin, by the way. Here's the stuff you already have. Yeah. LOL, if she was understanding you don't put him in that situation, it was never about. Okay, but she wasn't really the one putting him in the situation. Her father straight up told her, you are going to marry Laenor, because Rhaenyra couldn't, you know, she couldn't figure it out. She didn't know who she wanted to marry, whatever. So the situation then arises that Viserys is basically saying, you're going to, or you're not going to be the heir, basically, is kind of how that was going. So, I don't know. I mean, I think you could put this way more on the parents for the situation that arises, not Rhaenyra. I mean, maybe Rhaenyra should have just picked a husband, but I don't know. So let's move on. I basically already talked about why I thought Otto was kind of, I didn't really understand why he was there, and the whole logic there just to me was a little off, but it wasn't major to me. So we get more talk on the dragons and their power, which is good. We're very much talking about the idea that the dragons are the key to pretty much the entire war, right? And I really like that we continue to build upon that. And we get the kind of famous line. It's a little repurposed. It's a little repurposed, but it's a callback to Dany's line of "I do not wish to rule over a kingdom of ash and bone." So that was a good one. You know, I agree, Beelzebub. I agree. Maybe it's because he knows that he wants war and that Daemon would not let peace happen if he was the one to be there as well. I don't know. She didn't take her engagement tour seriously. Yes, she did. She slighted Cole as Cole saw it. Rhaenyra dragged Cole into losing his honor, then Laenor ends up catching the flack from that. I'm not sure what you mean by that. Rhaenyra instigates said situation of Cole like sleeping with her. But did Cole resist? Like Cole maybe seemed a little awkward of it, but he still went through it with it. You know, like he consented to go with it. Like, and he even is like, I want to marry you and stuff like that. I don't. That's not the way I interpreted that. But we're not gonna talk about it. We're too far ahead of. Yeah. So then we get to this whole idea where Rhaenyra is acting quite a lot like Viserys. Like, she's being very inactive. She's not being assertive. And this is something that Rhaenyra struggles with continuously through the war, is her best strategy in her mind is inaction. Maybe we could have peace, maybe this or that. And Daemon is kind of more of a realist, right? Daemon is more of someone that, like, he sees what's going on, right? We are not going to have peace unless you bend the knee. It's just not how it's going to go. And then Rhaenyra brings up the Song of Ice and Fire prophecy, which I don't know why she brought that up. Apparently, she's like, well, we needed peace for that, but it's like, okay. Then Daemon starts choking her, and I'm just like, why? Why? Why was this needed? I just... Like, it fits Daemon's character because he's just an evil dude in the show. But why was this needed? Why do they need Daemon choking her? Like, you can have Daemon getting pissed off, upset, whatever. Say that. Show that. Don't have him choking her. Like, why? It was just weird. It didn't really make any sense to me. It was just dumb. And just, yeah, I don't know. Even with all being said, Daemon is right, though. He is right in the whole decision of the war is already starting. They need to action, or they need to, like, do some actions. They need to start putting in place their plans, but yeah, the choking was just. And then finally, we get a scene of Corlys and Rhaenys. They meet up and all this, and I love that we see two ways of grief. Corlys deals with his grief by fighting, going off and warring, getting away from the situation, and that's really good that we see that idea, right? And I think that was good. So I like that dynamic between the two. I wish we had seen more of the two throughout the series, and yeah. Also, something they did a good job of at least acknowledging, they don't talk about it too much or spend too much time on it, but Corlys finding out that his brother died, something that we hadn't seen yet up to this point. Also, show is not good, y'all. I mean, I would disagree. I think the quality has been pretty solid for the first season. I have gripes with the show. I don't think it's perfect, but I think it's definitely pretty solid quality for a TV show. We then see Corlys basically backs Rhaenyra, and he's kind of convinced because Rhaenys is like, well, out of the two, she is the one trying to keep peace. She is the one where everybody's telling her to go to war and do this or that, and she's not really listening. And that's why Corlys goes to their side. And I like that they're just not right on board right away, right? I like that they talk about it a little bit. And this is an interesting decision to talk about because of Laenor's situation and all that. And I think it's a good way of just not shoehorning them into the plot forcibly, I feel like. So then, again, we see more of Rhaenyra in action, foreshadowing for later, and very much will affect a lot of the characters within the room. We get the plan of the blockage of the gullet. Again, another good plan. Doesn't have any violence to start out, but it's a blockade. That makes a lot of sense. It fits Rhaenyra's plan, and it's a good first step. And then we have the strong kids. Basically, they're going to do these missions. Jace is going to go up north into the Vale, and that also the younger Luke, so the second youngest, he of the three strong kids, whatever. He is going to go to Storm's End. And I've talked about the connections that they have and why they were sent there, but they don't really explain it too well on the show. But it's fine for me. It's just a nice little thing for the book viewers, or yeah, book watchers, whatever. So this moves to our last scene with Rhaenyra and her kids. And I like that they give, one last scene with Rhaenyra. And you really feel Rhaenyra and Luke's relationship. It makes it feel like they actually had something. And I just wish we had seen more of it with the kids. And again, I will harp back to this all the time. They needed more episodes for this first season. They really did. I think 13 episodes would have really helped them in this story and helping make it more of an emotional roller coaster when we get to moments like Luke's death. I think having 3 more episodes really could have helped them. And we also have the callback to Dany's theme as they're riding off. So I thought that was really great. And another great callback. So another scene that we saw that I thought was kind of a weird scene. It just didn't fit to me in this episode, that I think was weird that they added this, but they cut out other things, is we get Daemon with Vermithor. So people that don't know who Vermithor is, that's the dragon that was King Jaehaerys' dragon. And it's a beautiful shot where he's singing to Vermithor, and it's like, you're going to have a new writer, basically, is the gist. And it was like, I know where they're going with that plot, but it's just a weird thing, like, for a casual viewer, that I think this could have been saved for season 2, really. And I agree, the time jump does really hurt the relationship with the kids. But that will lead us into kind of our grand finale, and I think we've talked a lot about it. So I'm not going to talk about like the actual Aemond and Luke like chase scene at all, but we're going to talk about the beginning. So what I really liked about this is that Luke's descension into Storm's End and his flight to Storm's End, everything looks wonderful. This is visually the best episode of the series, hands down in my opinion. And they do a great job of establishing the tone. Right, it really establishing that whole idea, and I loved that. And another thing I really liked was Storm's End looked great as well. They show like a shot of Storm's End, everything in Storm's End, pretty damn good. So do a great job of, even the shot of Vhagar in the background when Eryx lands is fantastic. It was really great. I love that, and I also love that they basically show you the size difference from the beginning, just showing you that this comes down to a fight. Only one's winning here, right? But yeah. Also, Ashley, that would make sense on why Daemon is doing it. I just feel like maybe we only needed to see, I think that would have been a good like season 2 opener, or something like that, because I just don't feel like he was needed in this episode. So they deliver or Luke delivers the message to Boris Baratheon, and what I think here is interesting is that this is one of those moments that I was looking forward to seeing how they did it, because this is a major Maester conspiracy moment in the book, because there's this idea that Boris can't read and he needs a Maester to read to him. And the whole idea here is that the Maester tells whatever's in this letter, or supposedly what's in the letter, to Boris, and Boris gets visually pissed off and angry. And they didn't really go that route in the show. Like, he seems like mildly annoyed, but he doesn't seem angry, like pissed off. So I don't know. It is interesting. And it's also interesting that this is a pretty sizable letter, right? And it was a pretty decently long letter, and really the Maester like says a very quick thing, right? And that's it. And Boris takes this as, oh, you know, Rhaenyra is telling me to remember my vows or my oaths or whatever that my father whatever did. And I think they downplayed the actual Maester conspiracy in this moment, but I do think it's a little interesting that there's like 2 to 3 paragraphs on this letter, and that's all he got out of it. So was it like Rhaenyra basically declaring herself or something like that, talking about the Greens, and then saying, you know, I'm asking you to remember the oaths of your father or whatever. So I'm interested to see if we'll ever get like an actual explanation into that. If that really all that was on that message was just remember your oath, basically. But that's something that I do think is a bit interesting. Storm's End design tells me show definitely isn't canon. Yeah, but it's okay. It's the show. We out of all the things they've not done canon right, I'm cool with it. I think Storm's End just looks pretty cool. Yeah, agreed, Ashley. I think that would have been a better way of handling it. It was pretty, but that's not the real. Yeah, I agreed. I agree. But in this show where we're having so many different storylines going on, so many different changes, I'm cool with Storm's End looking the way it did on the show. I thought it was fine. It was serviceable, and it looked pretty good. It's bizarre if you think that Rhaenyra had never had a single dialogue with Aegon, her own brother, who is also the main. Yeah, it is a bit interesting, and it's going to be interesting to see how, if you guys know what ends up happening at the end of the Dance of the Dragons, how they're going to play that out, like that final kind of conclusion to both of their character arcs in that moment. Yeah, Daemon does not pay attention to his daughters. Yeah, no, he does not give a shit about his daughters. They should have started the show at Luke's death. I highly disagree. This season could have been split into 2. I agree. It did bug me that Boris doesn't read the letter in the book either. He gets it basically it's the same way. Everything happens nearly the exact same way in the book. It's just that it's a bit different in the reaction of Boris and how he receives the letter. I'm pretty sure they didn't, Hugo. I never saw Rhaenyra say anything to Aegon at one point. I'm pretty sure. All right. So that kind of works out. And then as Luke is leaving, Aemon basically, you know, starts antagonizing him, saying he's going to take his eye and all these things. And it really goes to establish him. And yeah, so guys, Boris couldn't read. That's something that was in the book, and it's a major Maester conspiracy thing. It's a major thing that goes into that theory. But I agree, Ashley. I think that would have been a good place to end the season with Viserys' death. But I thought they handled like the whole Aemon chasing Luke pretty well. It's just I'm very mixed and don't like really the way Luke died and it being an accident. We've talked about that a lot in this stream. Maybe I'll turn around on that opinion when I see how they go about that in the next season. But for now, I'm just gonna have to wait. And I think this is to me another weird part of the episode is the ending was weird. Like it was a good scene, but it was weird that the season ends with just Daemon walks into the room, Rhaenyra hears the news, and she just got a like you can tell like she's pissed, like she's coming for the greens or whatever type face. I don't know. It's interesting. It's interesting. How are you going to be a lord and not know how to read? Girl, get out of the castle and go farm or some shit. You know what, Glossy? Maybe what needed to happen is Boris just needed to have a queen like you in that moment, and just you would have had to read to him. I don't know. You could have been Queen Glossy of Storm's End. I don't know. Yeah, Matthew, that makes more sense, but I don't know. Did he kill? So, all of the rumors that are said, yes, that he killed him on purpose. That's what we're told. Now, again, unreliable narrator, and we have multiple POVs of what possibly happened there, but none of them say it was an accident. I think most of them, I'm pretty sure it all says like that Aemon meant to kill him. Yeah, it was a cool scene. Don't get me wrong. It just felt like a weird scene to end the entire episode on. I would have gotten rid of his ass and ruled with my daughters. Fair enough, Glossy. Fair enough. That seems like a Glossy type thing to do. I just want to let you guys know because this is very important. This is very important. The Patriots are winning 14-10 right now with 6 minutes left in the second quarter. I got the Patriot shirt on for the stream. Hold on. So, yeah, we're barely beating the Bears, which is a little, but it is interesting. I'm excited for the first appearance of Kermit Tully. Kermit Tully is a legend, okay? He is a legend. Turn this bitch into a matriarchy. Oh, boy. Rhaenyra wishes you. Oh, boy. Oh, boy. Okay, all the power has gone to her head. And this is a great visual storytelling. I did notice very good at visually telling what's going on, right? And the music was great in this scene, but it was just a weird point to end the season on, in my opinion, right? Like, I don't know. Bro, I need the Pats defense to get me 10 points in fantasy tonight or I lose. Good luck with that one. I think Justin Fields will probably throw some picks in the second half. But I will say, since we're on the topic of football and or fantasy football, I just want to say, it's American football, by the way, Hugo. I want to say, your boy is, I believe I'm 6-0 right now in the YouTube Fantasy Football League. So I want to give a major shout out to my guy Saquon Barkley, my guy Nick Chubb, and Cooper Kupp. They're putting in a shift. We've had some quarterback controversy on the fantasy football team. It's been a looping circle. Justin Herbert started out, and now it's Burrow, and then I had Brady for a week, and now it's Burrow again. So, we're doing good. We're doing good though. That's fair shot. I'm confused as to what you're saying, Glossy, but yeah. So the episode ends with kind of Rhaenyra having her, I guess, dark moment, and it just cuts to black. And I was like, seems like quite an odd place to end the episode on, or the season on as a whole. But again, I came out of it feeling like a lot of good things that I wanted to see, but there was also a lot of questionable things, mixed things that didn't make sense at times. But again, like I've said, I think it was a decent start. It was no Game of Thrones season 1 start, where Game of Thrones season 1 was, and I didn't realize this at the time because, again, I read the books around season 4, season 5. It was, I think Game of Thrones season 1 is the best adaptation out there for a TV show. I think it's one of the best adaptations ever. And you even look at how they added to the series, to the series, where they added scenes like Robert and Cersei and Littlefinger and Varys. It did a great job of adapting that. And I know it is hard to adapt the Dance of the Dragons and Fire and Blood specifically, but I just think there's a lot of decisions that they've made in the first season that just bothered me and held this season back from being as great. If I was going to rank all of the Game of Thrones seasons and House of the Dragon in there as well, I'd put this like in between like the top 4, or the earliest 4 seasons of Game of Thrones, and then there would be like House of the Dragon, and then it would be like the last 4. Like, it's just in that weird scenario where it's not as good as the first seasons were, but it's not as bad as the fourth or the last 4 seasons. It's just somewhere in the middle where it's good, but not great. So that's how I view it. Let me know what you guys think on that assessment. But I started when Clash of Kings came out. Okay, should make sense. Got season 1 or Got season 1 wins easily. It's not even close. I mean, it's just not close. Like, to me, Game of Thrones season 1 is just on another level than House of the Dragon was. More rewatches people. I think that's very possible, Shot. I think it's very possible. I think as more casual viewers rewatch it, it will probably lose a lot of its wonder, maybe. I don't know. Oh boy, Hugo, don't start that. I just realized season 2 will finally tell us what happened to Rob since his fate is unknown in the books. That is correct. There's a lot of things I'm interested to see with how they handle it on the show compared to the book, because there are things we just don't know. That'll be interesting to talk about, and it'll be interesting to review. So with this being said, I was going to mention this at the beginning of the stream, but we got sidetracked, and we had a lot of comments coming in, a lot of things going on. From now on, since we will not be having House of the Dragon for, it would assume, like at least a year or two, we'll be going back to the normal Song of Ice and Fire streams, where we either do our brackets, discussions, tier lists. We'll be doing all those at least once a week. I won't promise twice a week at this point, but I'll try. If I have free time, I will be doing 2 streams. Those streams will most likely be on, there will always be one on Monday for you guys, always be on Monday, and then the other one will be there on Wednesday or Friday. It's the normal time, so. And yeah, like you said, I think GOT season 1, to me, I liked that season more and more the more I watched it. But I think House of the Dragon ranks like GOT season 5. Yeah, I kind of think so too, because it's like, if you look at season 5, it was a loose adaptation of Feast for Crows and also Dance with Dragons. It's kind of how I feel about this show with Fire and Blood. It's kind of it's I wouldn't say it's a loose adaptation, but it's a middle adaptation. It does a lot of things that are good. It does a lot of things that are like, But they said on season 2 they're going to be, if they're just now saying that, what did they do in season 1? Like, they pulled a lot away from the source material in season 1, I feel like. Do you think they will end up releasing series or usually like Snow starting when House of Dragon ends in season 3? Possibly. If I was them, I wouldn't do that though. That's fair, Shot. That's fair. But yeah, so that is going to be the stream. I'm thankful for all you guys that have come along this journey of House of the Dragon season 1. Very much a roller coaster, up and downs, it seemed like every single week. I'm looking forward to season 2, even with all my complaints, even with all my bitching and complaining. I'm looking forward to it. They're gonna slow it down. Hopefully, it'll be better. It'll be a bit more logical and such. And that's kind of it. But yeah, so thank you guys for the sticking along on the journey. And I will see you guys in either the next video, which will be tomorrow, or the next stream. Probably won't be one this week. I have a pretty busy week with my dad's birthday and stuff, as well as schoolwork is kind of starting to pile up a little bit and all that. And we're also, you guys are getting a lot longer videos this week. All the videos this week, I think, are going to be longer than 25 minutes. So you're guys going to enjoy that. Enjoy that. But yeah, so thank you guys all for stopping in.